Hello and welcome to Fix More Tech. This is my first video on this channel. You may, and it's a very slight may, recognize me from my other channel, Fix More Waste Less. That channel focuses on fixing electronics, mods, micro soldering, things of that nature, and I really wanted to do some videos just on tech in general, but I just didn't think that they would fit under that channel's content, so here we are with a new channel to place these videos. I love tech, particularly gaming. If you've seen any of my videos, you know they're mostly about fixing consoles from the big three. So for this first video, I just wanted to talk about the Switch 2. Now, I know it's been announced for a while and the hype for it sort of died down a bit and I've missed that initial wave of excitement, so I'm sure no one's going to see this video, but that's fine. The Switch 2, man, have we been waiting a long time for that to be announced. I mean, it feels like there have been rumors about this thing coming out for the last 5 years, or at least a Switch Pro version on the horizon. But I think we can all agree that at this point, Nintendo just isn't into the mid-life refreshes that give you a more powerful console. They like their little tweaks and different designs, but the internals typically either stay the same or actually, in some cases, end up downgraded. I mean, the Game Boy Advanced SP wasn't more powerful, just a different design and a better screen. With an even better screen on the 101 versions, the Game Boy Micro, again, not more powerful and could only play advanced games. The DS Lite couldn't play different games. I guess the DSi did get some DSi enhanced games, sort of like the new 3DS had some games that were only playable on the new hardware. And by some, I mean like 15, most of those being eShop games. Still not really a Pro version in the same sense of the PS4, now PS5 Pro, or an Xbox One X. But the Switch is going on like 8 years at this point, and it was, as has been typical of Nintendo since the Wii, far less powerful than its rivals. Not to say that that in any way matters for what Nintendo tries to do. They're not in this business to push the most pixels out of their devices. They're in it to push the most smiles, and arguably they do that better than anyone else. No one really cares that Mario or Zelda games aren't the highest definition 4K HDR ray tracing graphical powerhouses that you sort of have come to expect from Cyberpunk, Spider-Man, Resident Evil, but they still get the job done, usually. But those hiccups and frame drops are starting to become more and more noticeable. Obviously, the last generation Pokemon game ran notoriously bad on the Switch, and some people managed to get it to run decent on emulators, so it does sort of point to the fact that the Switch's performance wasn't enough for the game. Not that Game Freak wasn't still at fault, they could have optimized for it. I mean, plenty of other games did. And I noticed plenty of stuttering in Tears of the Kingdom, which doesn't ruin the experience at all for me, but it is a bit annoying at this point. Although we know nothing about the Switch 2's performance yet, we're all assuming and hoping it has a decent bump in spec. I mean, it has to, right? Like I said, this thing is 8 years old, and that should hopefully help Switch 1 games run and perform better. Whether they just do that natively or certain game release patches to help them perform better on Switch 2, that will be interesting to see. But what do we know? Well, not much. The Switch 2 will have a larger screen, and while it looks like it might be close in size to the Switch OLED screen, I really don't think it's going to be an OLED screen. When you just look at the reveal trailer, and you see they're comparing the Switch 2 to the Switch original, and the screen colors of the original look exactly the same as on the Switch 2. I think if it were an OLED screen, the colors would be slightly different. And I get that these videos might be completely simulated and not real at all, but I still think they'd be different if one was supposed to be an OLED screen. So with a larger screen, the whole device is going to be slightly bigger, and it actually looks like it's going to be even bigger in size than the OLED version. On some hands, that's good. I mean, the Joy-Cons will be bigger, which I do like because I honestly play a decent amount of games with my family using just the Joy-Cons for like Mario Kart and Mario Party. And the Joy-Cons are just a bit too small for long playing sessions, especially something like Mario Kart. I do wonder about the Joy-Cons being offset from the middle on the new one like they are in the original. I mean, depending on which one you're using, the fake D-pad and control stick are either pushed to the left or the right, and it looks like in the pictures this might be even more dramatic on the Switch 2. So I do wonder about how you might have to hold this if it's going to have this piece of plastic protruding out of either the left or right side. But that's not something you're really going to be able to tell until we get our hands on it. The only thing revealed briefly about the new Joy-Cons is that they're going to have some sort of mouse-like setting where you can put the Joy-Cons on a flat surface and move it around. I have no idea what that's going to be used for, and frankly, I could see it being one of those little additions that never gets used for the big budget games. I mean, most AAA games, people will use a Pro Controller or at least a Joy-Con grip, so I just can't see them implementing something where it's like, oh, now you have to take the Joy-Con out and place it on a flat surface that you hopefully have in front of you to do this critical part. I mean, that's just my initial reactions to that little gimmick. I can see it going the way of many of the other gimmicks like the IR reader. And they didn't mention anything about that extra button on the right Joy-Con, even had it blanked out instead of a C like the leaks, so we're still waiting to hear what that'll do. Maybe it'll have to do with the mouse function, who knows. And it was confirmed that the Joy-Cons attach using some sort of magnetic system. I've seen a few Switches with the rails damaged, and maybe this is a more secure way of attaching the Joy-Cons and they'll be more robust and protected, but I am anticipating someone finding a way to break that little tab on the Switch off, and that could be a real pain to repair. Hopefully it's designed in a way that's not really possible, but people are capable of breaking anything, I'll tell you that. As for the console itself, it does now have two USB-C charging ports, which will be very interesting to see how that works and how the internals of it work. Definitely something I'll be taking a look at over on Fix More Waste Less, because the charging port on the Switch is just notorious for being easily damaged and killing many systems. So I'm super curious how they're implementing this system. I imagine it can only dock from the bottom port and the top port will be only for charging the battery while playing. I don't know if that's something that was highly in demand. I remember when the Switch came out and people complained because they couldn't play in tabletop mode for very long due to the charging port being on the bottom and the battery life not being very good. But once the Redbox Switch came out with its longer battery life, and I think people kind of realized tabletop mode wasn't all that great a way to play anyway, these complaints seem to die down. Maybe there'll be some other use for it, but if it's just for charging while in tabletop mode, I think it'll be a port rarely used. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of data Nintendo can glean from it and whether or not that remains in future revisions or if it's something that they kind of remove just to save a few dollars in manufacturing costs. The kickstand looks to be a little bit more like the OLED kickstand than the original flimsy piece that barely even kept the console upright, so that's nice. They did kind of carve out the plastic around the kickstand. Hopefully it's still robust enough and doesn't crack. I really like the kickstand on the OLED. It's never felt like it's going to break or anything, but again, it's not something I use all that often, so I don't see any issue with this decision. I am glad it's got a pretty wide range of motion like the OLED one and not just one setting like the original. The dock didn't reveal much, so the only question I think it has is, will it have a wired internet connection like the OLED dock, or will it be more like the original dock and not have that? Hopefully it has the wired connection just so you have a more stable internet connection, which Nintendo always seems to really need. All in all, the Switch 2 looks kind of more like a revision to the Switch 1, and I really think that's what Nintendo's going for and what people honestly want. I know people were maligning it for being too similar, but the Switch worked. It worked so well that company after company tried to emulate the design in their own way. I mean, it spawned a whole new era of powerful handhelds to play your PC games. And yes, those are more powerful and push the graphics in impressive ways, but they don't play Mario, at least not officially, and they cost a lot more. I think the design of the Switch with the removable controllers, being able to seamlessly go from playing on your TV to playing in your hands is just the perfect design for a console like this. It's a console people dreamed about years and years ago, and it was so well executed that the Switch console may very well end up being the most sold console ever. Which is saying a lot considering that the previous console, the Wii U, only sold 13 million. That's not to say there's no room for improvement on the design, but you can't expect radical improvements in the design either. I mean, what did you want, a 3D screen? I think this is one of the cases where the gimmicks should be minimized and the games should be maximized, which it's doing by including most of the Switch 1 library as backwards compatible. I know the reveal trailer said that there were some games that wouldn't be playable on Switch 2, but I have to believe those are going to be games that require certain hardware specifications that the Switch 2 just doesn't have, like the IR reader, which is now gone, or the Labo with its form-fitting factor. I think every other game should be playable on Switch 2. Everything else is still rumor at this point, like the improved RAM, more internal storage, and even what the new NVIDIA chip is going to be. The rumors are probably all true, seeing as how the console looks just like the leak said it would. But I'll wait for the official announcement before speculating on what it means, and as always with Nintendo, these specs only tell one part of the story. We all know we don't play Nintendo consoles for the graphics or smooth frame rate or anything like that. We play for the story and the gameplay and the fun that the games are, and I have no doubt that the games that release for the Switch 2 will be a ton of fun. The only big question remaining is the price. Rumors have it starting somewhere between $350 and $400. I'm really hoping it starts somewhere around $350 and not $400. But the current OLED version starts at $350, so there's no way they're going to sell a Switch 1 for $350 and a Switch 2 for $350. Either the Switch consoles will all get a price drop, or maybe I could see the OLED kind of just being phased out, especially seeing as in that reveal trailer, they were really comparing the Switch 2 to the original. And I think that's pretty telling, actually, that they want to make the comparison that the Switch 2 is a successor to the original Switch, not to the OLED Switch. It's kind of weird having an LCD screen Switch 2 sitting next to an OLED screen, because that OLED screen is probably going to look better sitting next to the LCD screen. And if the prices are the same, it's gonna be a whole new mess that they don't want. Still, the Switch has never gotten a price drop, which is pretty amazing, especially since they've continued to sell a decent amount of the consoles for all of these years. But now would be a great time for a price drop, just before the Switch 2 releases, and then that gives more of an incentive for some people who still haven't gotten a Switch to buy that over a Switch 2. If the prices are only $50 apart, I don't see any reason to buy a Switch 1, but I also don't think Nintendo is going to stop production of the Switch 1 right away. So they're going to want to continue to sell those consoles. I guess if the Switch 2 price is $400, then they might still be able to sell $300 Switch 1. But that would make the Switch 2 the most expensive Nintendo console at launch by $100, and I think that's a bit too much of an increase, even with inflation and threats of tariffs and whatnot. But only time will tell, and hopefully Nintendo will tell us on April 2nd. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks for watching my first video on this channel. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the Switch 2's reveal. Were you surprised? Have you been living under a rock and had no idea what it would look like? Are you planning a day one purchase? And hey, if you like this video, then hit the like button. Come on, help the channel out. We'll see you in the next one.